CO, hello. I'm Cade Thomas, and we welcome back to a second half of our first season of Double Feature Movie Club. For the first time, we are both on YouTube and on Twitch, so if you can start watching us live on Twitch too, and then later the next day as a podcast, wherever you get your podcast things at. I'm joined this week with Diane. Diane, how you doing?
I'm great, Cade. Have you had a great summer?
I have had a great summer. We were off for the summer, and I had a fun time or productive time, I guess you could say. Which is what I'm
very productive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been listening to your other podcast.
Oh, thank
that
you.
You've released over the summer, and it's been quite enjoyable. A lot of fun. Laughed a lot.
Yes, if you enjoy, Cade and Friends, the other podcast I'm part of, releases every other Wednesday. We have one coming out this Wednesday too, so it should a lot of stuff. And then this will be weekly till the end of the year, roughly. We'll see whenever it actually ends. But yes, so you can join us here live on Sunday nights at 6 Central, and then the next day, Mondays, we put them out as a podcast too. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, be sure to review us or whatever they say. Rate us and give us a like, wherever. Yeah. Subscribe.
Follow, like.
Hit all the buttons.
Lots of stars, all the buttons.
Wherever you see a button at, click it. That's what we say.
Exactly. It's all about clicking the buttons.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Diane was on an episode of Cade and Friends.
I was.
I don't know, a few weeks ago, a month ago. I don't know. Time's weird. Whenever it was, but one of our more popular guests, you had a lot of TikToks come out of it and little reels that people enjoyed.
I had fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
But to let me tell, the best thing about getting old is you have a lot of stories. The worst thing about getting old is finding people to listen to them. So it was fun.
We gave you an audience to tell these stories.
That's right.
For. Yeah.
That's right. You gave me a whole audience for that, and putting it out on Instagram and TikTok. Mm-hmm. Then all my friends got to see it. I got some calls that says, "I remember when that happened." Yeah. It was a really fun time, and you had a lot of great stories, and we also learned a lot about Captain Crunch. Oh,
so, yeah.
Things I never even knew, because I always thought it was disgusting.
Yeah.
But who
knew?
Yeah.
So this is typically just for new listeners or people that, aren't familiar with our show. We spend the first part before we jump into our movies talking, just catching up. Also, I don't think I set up top what our movies were. But we're still getting into the groove here, so bear with us a little bit. But A Ghost Story from 2017 and then Extraordinary from 2019, I believe. Yes. 2 ghost movies. We will talk about that in a second, but right now we do our little catch-up time where we talk and everything. I wanted to say something. Last night, I went to go see the new A24 movie. You know how much we love A24 around here.
Yeah.
Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I don't know if you saw that advertised.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the advertisements for it. Was it good?
It was pretty good. It was enjoyable, I guess you could say. I think it's one of those movies that they certainly put all of the best parts in the trailer. So, which is fine, if I get the people cutting the trailer putting those jokes, because those are sort of the best jokes of the movie, and so but it was still an enjoyable experience. I liked it. I'll tell you 2 things coming out of it though. First off, odd, because I went to a rabbit hole with this thing of it was written by someone and they sold the script to A24 to produce the movie, and it was then rewritten and reworked and then made into this movie. And so that's not a shocking thing, but the odd thing is the way that it's credited is the person who originally wrote the first spec script that sold it to A24 gets a story by credit, and the rewriter gets the full screenplay by, which is I don't know what that means. I'm wanting to know, sort of. That's one of those weird things. It's unheard of. I mean, unless it's like, I mean, because you would typically get a written by this person and this person. And then the word and, not the ampersand, because those mean different things when giving credit in writing. But yeah, that was one of those, that I don't know exactly what that means. And I mean, it would mean that it had to be like a page one rewrite almost, where they kept none of the dialogue. And I don't know. That's bizarre to me that there's some sort of thing there.
Yeah, something in the contract. It says if we have to make X amount of changes or a percentage of change to this script, then you will retain story by credit, but not screen. Well, so let's say if they change 40% of the script, then you no longer get that. It could be just part of the contract.
And a lot of that, though, goes down to when things are like that, they go to the WGA. And they sort of are the decider of how these credits work. And so it's typically they're the ones who decide how the credit thing works. But almost typically it errs on the side of everyone gets credit. Everyone gets and that's why you get in these different movies. There's like 17 people that get written by credits and this sort of thing. So that's like, I don't know. That's bizarre. It's a little bizarre thing.
That is bizarre.
And then the other thing that I noticed is I watched the entire movie, and then at the end of it, it was like Lee Pace was in the movie, and I'm like, who is Lee Pace in that? And it was like he was a character that was in it throughout, and I realized I know how much you love Lee Pace. We might get into a problem here. I don't think I know what he looks like. He's got a blank face for me that I do not. If even like a police artist came up and I just watched a whole movie with him in it, if it was like describe this man to me, I couldn't. I don't think I could.
Yeah. You know, I think you can. He's extremely tall. First off,
yeah.
So everybody around him has to be on boxes. Second, he has like caterpillar butterflies. So they're like really thick butterfly kind of eyebrows. Caterpillar butterfly, caterpillar eyebrows, really thick eyebrows. And to me, that's how you can always spot Lee Pace because they can't do anything about that.
Yeah,
they're always there, except for like in the. What was it? He was in the Lord of the Rings. He was in The Hobbit, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He played the
I guess I have seen him in so many things, and I just forget. And then, like, even in that situation, it was like, oh, I guess that was Lee Pace who was in it throughout the movie. But I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. We saw him in one of our movies last time.
It's a horrible movie last year, yeah.
And
yeah.
Marvel movies, but he's in tons of makeup for those. But yeah, and it was just like, it was one of those shocking things of just like, oh, I guess I might not know who he is. Oh well. I couldn't pick him up. It was like a jarring experience because I typically know what actors look like in their faces, and it's like, and it's weird. It's like this guy that's been in a bunch of stuff that I know of, and I'm like, I still don't. It hasn't committed to memory. It's like I could have been in several rooms where Lee Pace was in, and I wouldn't have known it. I feel like.
Yeah,
he could have been.
Probably would.
Yeah,
he's 6'5". Yeah, we were talking about this maybe a couple of months ago. How you rarely run into anyone who's eye level with you, or you have to look up to.
Yeah, so people who are eye level, it's not too much of a shocker, but it's the looking up to.
It's the looking up, and he's one of those guys you would have to like look up to a little bit. Maybe. Well, I don't know. 6'5", depends, if it's standard straight or not, I guess. But, yeah. But that's not always obvious in movies. I mean, heck, they make Tom Cruise look 6'5".
Yeah,
they
do.
It's incredible.
Everybody's on. Yeah. He's on stilts the entire time. You don't even know. Yeah. Was it him that they had those photos of or somebody who they had he was like walking around on platform shoes? It must have been. I think it was him that they had like some sort of set thing that they showed some actor, and it was like they were on like these regular shoes that were just like on like blocks.
It was Robert Downey Jr.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That is who I've seen that. Yes,
it's Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Gwyneth Paltrow's like a foot taller than him.
Yes, so, it was Robert Downey Jr.
He had to be on stilts. They can only do so much with the box.
Yeah, exactly.
I always picture, him when they do side by side shots of him and another actor walking, that they have him on like a ramp.
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
Or a riser, so that he can be the same height as Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
fascinating. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
movie magic.
I saw, I watched 13 Lives again.
Oh,
I
again.
just, yes, because Ron Howard, when he's on, he's really
Hmm.
on. You're going to be
Yes.
entertained by his movie, right? So he did such a good job with that movie. I don't know if you've seen it yet or
I
not,
have
but
not. You've talked about it several
I,
times, but I.
golly, well, and everyone I know,
Uh-huh.
I've told everybody, you need to watch this movie because, Ava told me to watch. It was so funny because Ava and Jennifer sent me a text within literally 15 minutes of each other. It said, watch this movie. So I stayed up that night and watched it, and
Mhm.
which I just really watched it really quickly. And then I went back and watched it again so that I could actually watch it. And it is a phenomenal movie. I really wish it had been on the big screen.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird what decisions are made now with that, but yeah, I mean, like you were saying about Ron Howard. Ron Howard is he either he. He phones it in sometimes. I mean, let's be clear. There's sometimes he
Yeah.
just kind of is collecting a paycheck, but when he turns it on, like you said, he can direct as good as, I mean, like some of the greats. Like he's made some great movies. But
This one was like Apollo 13, where
hmm
he really captured the claustrophobia of these dives underwater in caves down these tunnels. I mean, he really captured that. And Ava just said she watched it twice too, which doesn't surprise me. She has been to Thailand, and so she really appreciated. From what she told me, she really appreciated how he was able to capture, you know, the country and the people and their culture and everything about it. And it was just he was on his A game on this one. I
that's
think
good.
he just has strengths,
Hmm.
and when a movie plays to his strengths, I think he does really well. But he has weaknesses too that doesn't. You see when you watch it, you don't always know which one
Hmm.
you're going to get with Ron Howard. But this one was really good,
Yeah.
and it stayed with me along with that movie that you told me to go see, and I don't think it's playing in theaters anymore. That what was it called? Everything,
Everywhere, all at once.
everywhere, all at once.
Hmm.
That one has really stayed with me. Thank you for recommending it. When it came
Yes.
out again, Jen and I went to see it, and it was so good. I
Yes.
laughed so hard, and then every now and then I'll be doing something, and something will remind me of that movie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was such a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so far the best movie of the year I've seen, and I mean, it's got, I mean, I mean, like it's everything. But it's just everyone's doing so well with that. That they're all, like you said, on their A game with that too, of just like, it's not even just directed just amazingly in the visual
Mm-hmm.
effects and all that, but like it's just a great acting showcase for everyone involved.
It
Like,
really is.
and
Yeah.
that's really, to me, is the standout of the thing, and which is hard because everything's really great, the story and the script and all that. But I've gravitated towards great performances in movies, and that's one where, I mean, everyone is just like, I'm so glad they gave all those actors the chance to really um, show what they can and just the breadth of emotion that they can do. I mean, Michelle Yeoh deserves the Academy Award,
Yeah. Yeah. Or at
but
least a
also, at
nom.
least a
But
nom, and then but like also James Hong. I just love that he was able
yes.
to, come in there and do just such a great performance, because he's been in just hundreds of movies throughout his entire career, and then be able to come in there and do that. That's I love him, and loved him that he got to do a performance like that again. It really a first time for that that I've seen him do a performance that is for that extended throughout a movie. He's typically a bit or a supporting character, and even this one he's a supporting character. But they even give most of their supporting actors several like arcs. They all have arcs, and they all
They
have
all have arcs,
and
yeah.
they have the ability to hit all these beats. And I don't recall a time that we've seen him be able to do that full of a character through an arc, and I'm
Oh,
so
yeah.
happy that he was
His
able to do that.
timing, his timing was great too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it was incredible. All of them, they were all like you said. I hope that we see them get some noms and maybe even some awards for ensemble because
Mm-hmm.
they as a entire cast, they all stepped up. They all had great parts to
Mm-hmm.
play. Like you said, they all had arcs, and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Yes, and
Wow.
she came in, and I love that she's always 100% in everything that she does, and she's one she doesn't, I don't think, get enough credit for an actress that she
Oh
is.
yeah.
It's repeatedly because she will do comedy stuff and she'll knock it out of the park every single time, and I think, and it's like a weird one that she doesn't fit like a type of character that, or type of actor that you know of. Like, she's kind of her own thing where she's been in some of the greatest comedies and she does that, but then she's also a scream queen and she's known for that too. And it's a fascinating she's a fascinating actress, and I think one of the greats, and I think that hopefully that will start to be well known and she gets some recognition for that. But she's great in so many movies.
She really is, and this one was she just knocked it out of the park. And
Mm-hmm.
not Michelle Kwan, like you said. I fell in love with her in Star Trek Discovery. The
Mm-hmm.
character she plays is so good in that series, and I haven't seen it since she's no longer part of it. And I guess I should watch it, but she was one of the reasons why I really really enjoyed it so much. And then she was in Crazy Rich Asians.
Mm-hmm.
She played the mother of the groom, or and again, just she always brings it, and she was so good in this movie. I hope she does get some kind of acting award nomination or
I
something.
think
Yeah.
this movie, when it first came out, I was like, "There's no way that this is going to have the longevity of being able to get nominated a full year after its release," because no movie really has ever, to my knowledge, in recent years, done that, been able to do that. And I was kind of upset for them for releasing it when they did. But because this movie is continually talked about, it got re-released. It's kind of has legs in a way that most movies don't, and I think it speaks to the quality of it, and I think it speaks to the people still talking about it, and it's still part of the conversation. I hope that it still is able to get through and is still talked about to that point. And I think now there's a little bit more better chance than I thought there was.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm. But it's
There's
still
certainly
a genre movie, and
that's true.
and there's still that working against it too.
That's true. Although I will leak this much: they did the multiverse better than Marvel did.
Yeah, and
I kind of love their multiverse, how they did that.
and it's bizarre. I mean, we don't talk about Marvel all that way. We hint at it, Marvel, quite a bit. But so if this saga is supposed to be the multiverse saga, like the last saga was the Infinity Saga about the Infinity Stones, which they've just sort of announced that name and everything and their plans for that. I get the feeling that I think initially we were thinking that these individual movies were going to be the big multiverse movies, but I think now we realize that no, those have yet to come. Like, and that's the way that I think of it. Is like we have yet to explore that. They're kind of just teasing us now that they've sort of announced their plan. I think the idea is that these are all just been teases to a larger, huger movie that they kind of explore that a little bit with more depth and more interesting, which is like, I mean, it's fine. I guess I mean, I kind of wish they would do it good. I mean, and it, now knowing their plan, I think that's the idea, is that there's going to be a huge sort of thing with Secret Wars at the end that they're going to sort of.
Okay. Well, I'm good with that. I did. They're never going to be able to top how a person goes from one one universe to the other that they did in this movie.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they're never going to be able to top that.
They're not going to be. And it's crazy because this is one movie. They don't have like the nostalgia factor and the ability to sort of tie on. Like you meet these characters all in this movie, and it does something extraordinary. I mean, what that movie was is it was a feat of filmmaking, and it was a balancing act that you watch it and it's like you think it's gonna teeter at any point, but it just continues chugging along and just nails it. And that was sort of something from a filmmaking perspective that the first time I watched it, that I was just like, you're ready for this thing to kind of just collapse under its own weight, and it never does, and that's what's spectacular about it.
I recommend it highly. It's it'll be out on a streaming service at some point, I'm sure. But
Yes.
yeah, it was just very released to theaters, and I just checked, and it's not on AMC anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's out anywhere else. But yeah, if you get a chance to watch it, watch it. It is really good.
Yes.
That and 13 Lives. These are my two. Now we can talk about this
Now
week's
we could
movies.
talk about our this week's movies. Great. Great. We're gonna jump in. Typically, Diane is supposed to do the first movie, but she very graciously gave that to me this week. So thank you,
Very
Diane.
great. You're right. Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Cade.
right before we went on, so it's not going to be all that prepared. So, anyways, our two movies we're discussing are two ghost movies: A Ghost Story from 2017, and afterwards we'll talk about Extraordinary from 2019. So, we're gonna have a little graphic, our feature presentation, and then I'll explain the plot of A Ghost Story. Okay, our first movie is A24's 2017 movie, A Ghost Story. It stars, as you can tell by this poster if you're watching the video version, Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. In this movie, they're a young couple in their home, and Casey Affleck dies. He dies in a car accident right outside of his house. This is a little bit not too far into the movie. It's the premise, and he becomes a ghost in a sheet, a la a Halloween costume. This is it's very starts off very, I think it's fair to say, hipstery kind of. He's a musician. I didn't mention that. He writes little songs and stuff, and then I have no idea what she does. But she's there too, and they're in love, and he dies, and he becomes this ghost that's represented with the under a sheet with little eyes. It's shot 4:3, vignetted, and it's a meditation on a lot of things, on death, on loss, on grief, but I don't know how much we want to get into this, but it goes further than that, and it's at a point it pivots, and it's a pretty interesting movie. Yes, so we'll get into spoilers in a bit, but I don't know, but we'll talk about that as it is. That's the basic premise of the movie, is that he's watching from afar, or not from far, from inside these rooms of this home that they lived in, and sort of as a witness to what life happens after his death, and it's a relatively silent film. Just don't know that getting into it. There's only a few different after the first act, that there's only a few dialogue scenes in the whole thing. It's mostly a silent film, which I would say I didn't notice. I mean, you notice it, but it doesn't. To me, that's not a negative in a sense that I would. If I heard that would scare me off of the movie. I would say that's definitely not its weak part. Is the fact that it's mostly dialogue-less. I think that it works in its favor for that part does, at least.
Yeah, I think that the soundtrack really helped this movie move forward, because you're right, it didn't have a lot of dialogue, but the soundtrack was really it added a level of emotion to the movie that you didn't get from the actors necessarily.
And it's bizarre because, like, I wouldn't say that, Casey Affleck, when you first start the movie, it's like, oh God, I forgot Casey Affleck talks like that.
I know.
And it's like, oh God, but then he dies, and so we're good. We never hear him talk again.
I'm not sure he was actually in the movie after that.
Oh, well,
anybody could have been into that sheet.
I looked this up because I'm like, was Casey Affleck was under the sheet the entire time? Which it was a shock to me. I really thought that he was out of the movie, but no. The director said every single shot of the ghost is Casey Affleck underneath that sheet.
Well, he had
Which,
something covering his head underneath that sheet to make it
yes,
look like it did.
yes.
Anyway,
Which cool
yeah,
design, by the way.
yeah,
And it was simple. It was effective. It was the eye holes were great because it was black underneath, and you could kind of had like a kind of a dementia 3D dimension to it. That was really cool. But on top of that, I just liked at the end where it was like flowing like kind of like a specter. Like it was a long trail after it, and I thought that looked really cool. And then there were several shots of that was like him walking through from the hospital to back to the house, and where he's like walking through like this grass and this hilly area. There was this beautiful shot there. A lot of this is shot during early morning hours. Mm-hmm. Like you can, and like that's the sort of time, and so it's kind of this kind of otherworldly kind of feel to it because of it. Most of the exterior shots are shot during, you can tell during that time when it kind of has this kind of otherworldly feel to it.
Yeah. There were scenes that actually for me just went on too long.
I think I know which one you're thinking about.
Forever.
That's what everyone talks about, a specific scene in this movie.
Well, her eating the pie.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were other scenes where it was like, oh my gosh, him watching her sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did write this down. There needs to be an award for the weirdest sleeping position of a couple ever. Because no way, never, no way would a couple sleep in the positions that these two slept in.
Part of me thinks, I mean, some of it had to be that they had to like create interesting compositions because of how close the frame was to. I mean, I had a similar situation with Ribbon, so I know that actors have to be kind of needlessly close to each other, and like we.
That was just there's no way. Anyway, and I liked what the movie did with time.
And so that to me is the point of why in the beginning it takes like the first two acts of it. So fun fact, this movie very fascinatingly has a 5-act structure, which is something that I wasn't really prepared for. I'm a very fan of act structure, and so I talk about that very often in this podcast. It has a 5-act structure, which is rare. Most movies don't have a 5-act structure, and really when you do a 5-act structure like that, is it harkens back to like a Shakespearean kind of almost like since it does deal with themes later and all this sort of weighty ideas and these epic sort of things, it harkens back to sort of, it makes your mind sort of think back to these other things that are 5-act structures, whether or not you know it or not, that's sort of what this movie's doing. And so the first 2 acts are really focused on this relationship with, and the sort of first act being to the point when he dies, and the second act being the sort of the grief and loss that she experiences and everything, and him witnessing it. Those are kind of shown in like ultra realistic time where things exist for these extended periods of what this would really be like in real time. And it at first, I'm with you. Those first 2 acts to me were like, what is this movie doing? This is so needlessly overlong and tedious, and I don't really care about these characters. At one point I wrote down, has there ever been 2 more casually annoying leads ever? They were so casually annoying that it's just like, oh gosh. But then it turns. But then you're talking about how the time changes.
And I wrote this down too. In the first 15 minutes, there's nothing visually appealing about this movie. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Just said in the first 15 minutes, that's what, I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes. And it was fascinating because like to me, there were specific times in which like, oh, this was definitely meant to be 4:3, like, because it was planned and like there were shots of it that was like, it looked good, and that of course you would imagine that it was intentionally done that way. But then there are times in which there's like something on the side that's like, that could have been composed slightly better if the intention was for this to be 4:3. So at times I don't know if it was always intended to be a 4:3 ratio or if that was something in post. Because, like, at times I felt like it wasn't intentional or something. I don't know, because I was like, that should have been composed slightly different. But And then other times I'm like, well, that's highly intentional. So I don't know. I don't really know what that means, but yeah, it was.
Well, neither actor looked visually appealing. I'm not sure Casey Affleck had washed his hair in the previous year, but and then of course the way he talks.
Yes.
And then is it Runa? How do you say her name?
Rooney Mara.
Rooney Mara is a beautiful woman. She looked better in let's see, The Kiss of the Spider Woman than she did in this movie. And she had a lot of piercings and tattoos. But they just
dragon
made
tattoo. Girl with a dragon tattoo.
That's it. Girl with a dragon tattoo. Anyway, they were visually unappealing as well. You know, from just the look of them. The home that they lived in was worse than the one I grew up in, which was pretty freaking bad. And and there was nothing appealing about it.
So I wrote down things about this house of like, are we supposed to really believe that Rooney Mara would live in a house like this? Like, I mean, she's like this from an ultra rich family, and she just looks from like this. She just like looks high class, and then for her to be like walking around in this like dilapidated home is at times laughable. Of like, let me like play poor, pretend, and everything. It's just like. And like these hipster people kind of being like, oh, look at, we're kind of like these poor people or what. At times, because I fell down a rabbit hole of like I knew that she was from a family, like her mother's parents are like the what I have here. They founded the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then her father's parents founded the New York Giants, and so and it's the Rooney family and the Mara family, and so her sister's, you know, Kate Mara, who I kind of like better than her. I don't know if I want to compare the two sisters, but I really loved her in House of Cards, and I think she's a really good actress. Hasn't been given the opportunities I think Rooney has, but their middle names are Rooney. Their middle names are Rooney because of their family, the Rooney family and everything. And her real name is Patricia Mara, but she goes by Rooney Mara.
Yeah. Well, she definitely was not an appealing part. She wasn't in, so she was in the first two acts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then she's gone.
She comes back later, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah. She, I thought it was interesting as part of their dialogue that they had with each other was the fact that she wanted to move from that house and he wanted to stay.
Yes.
And then after he dies, he stays at the house. He doesn't stay with her. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was an interesting concept that, you know, the writer-director said he wrote this movie for his wife. Well, pretty obvious he don't want to stay with the wife. He wants to stay with the home.
Yeah, I think it was because I was reading how he was kind of like it was location-based, you know, the whole thing is like, and I think that's, I mean, the idea of like we even kind of think of ghosts that way, that they don't travel with, they kind of loom around the places that they know, and like that's why like places are haunted. They're not really like they follow people. So I do think that they're playing a little bit with that. He wrote this as like a similar situation. His wife wanted to move out of this home, and he was like very attached to it, and he felt always very attached to the places that he did, and there was like part of him that stayed in these places and it was like an excruciating experience any move. And I do think that that's a fascinating sort of exploration of that really I haven't seen a movie really talk about in that sort of way, is that different people have different perspectives with that, and it has a lot to do with how they were raised, whether they're playing into how they were raised or against it. But like some people, in this case, she had moved around a lot as a child and thus didn't really have this sort of connection to place and everything, and that she was okay with sort of leaving. And that's certainly some people's case. There's some people who move around a lot as children and they want to stay in one place because they never really had a home. And then there's other people that like her, where they're moved around a lot, and so they really don't have a place that call home, and so they really don't care where they're at because they have grown up in a sense of like that didn't really matter to them. And then you have someone like Casey Affleck's character who seemingly didn't have that, because that's sort of pointed out like she had that there's people that stay around in one location, and so location means a lot to them. And so, I mean, I must say I responded a lot to that, because I do feel a sense of any place that I'm at, it's part of me, and it is kind of an excruciating thing to sort of say goodbye to any place like that because of the place becomes sort of very important, because I lived in one location for all my childhood, but I don't think a lot of other people seemingly have that, or if they do, they sort of deal with that privately or whatever, that they just sort of shirk it off and go on with their life. And it's, so I did feel very sort of, I felt like that was a very deep sort of theme in the movie.
Would you have really been that attached to that house, though?
I think at a certain point, you sort of, because of how it deals with time, that you kind of don't even know, like with the other ghost. Again, well, I guess we're going into spoilers here. There's another ghost that he sees across the way, and they don't even know what they're attached to that place anymore is. It's some person or something, and they've since forgotten, and they're just lingering, on this location, because they don't really even and that's sort of, I think, the point of it. The point is that the love is what made that place important. It was who you had there to share these experiences with, and that's what the note sort of signifies. But you become so obsessed with keeping a hold of something that you don't even know what the whole point of why you're there and why this location is important. I think that that's the whole journey that his character's on, is that he's like, this location's so important, but really what was so important was that love, and was what that place meant in that relationship. And that's the whole arc that he sort of goes on. And that's why he's able to, cross on. And that's why the other person was able to cross on, is because they realized the sort of point in the grand scheme of things, because this movie's deals with these weighty themes of like, what's the sort of point of life in general, and when we all die and everything, that perhaps it is these connections. Perhaps it is sort of making some sort of sense of this madness that we're in. I thought that was kind of a fascinating exploration of a lot of things, and dealt with a lot more themes than I anticipated. So we talked about the first two acts and how I was kind of not on board with the first two acts. To me, this movie, the best part is its third act. If there's a third act structure, that the pivot to where when she leaves, and she leaves the house, and you're like, well, where's this movie going now? That she's left after this. If there's a 5-act structure, she's left. You assume this whole movie was going to be that, was him dealing with her, and him dealing with this sort of love, and watching her continue in her life, living in this house and moving on from him and everything. That doesn't happen. That shifts, and she leaves the home. She paints it all up and sells the home. And that's when the movie, I think, shifts and becomes something, I think, really extraordinary. And that is that third act, from when she leaves to jumping off the building. That third act is just an amazing little film in itself.
Yeah, by itself, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
it got definitely more interesting. It picked up a lot of speed. It got more interesting. It brought in characters. Loved the Hispanic family.
Mm-hmm.
Hated that he was so mean to him. Scared him off.
Mm-hmm.
He actually became,
and I think he hated himself. Yeah, he hated himself for that, I think, a little bit too, because
really?
he saw.
Did you have to scare those little kids that way?
Yeah, it's yes. I that was so to explain. She then leaves, and there's a Hispanic Spanish speaking family there that's in the home. No subtitles. You could get from inference what they're talking about and everything. Oh, yeah. It's pretty clear to follow along what's happening. And he's upset that someone else is in his home, and so time starts moving quicker, and you sort of got a little bit of that with her, with like how she's then. Someone comes over, and then she's with them, and like it's like, well, that seemed really quick, and then she's already like cleaned up the house and everything, but then like this new family moves in, and then it's Christmas time, and then it starts moving, picking up pace of this time where previously to this we didn't really explain that whenever he was looming around the house and she was grieving, there was a 5-minute sequence of her eating a pie. We didn't mention that. But important to note, an unbreaking long shot of Rooney Mara sitting on the floor eating a whole pie.
She earned her paycheck that way. She really did. She didn't even swallow it 3 times. I mean, she really earned it that one. for sure. And that was boy, those scenes were so hard. I wrote down, now we watch her sleep. Now we look out the window at rain. Now we leave the house and the seasons change. And then the Hispanic family. Oh, I did write at this point, crim music.
Crim music. Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
There was some synth things. It was bizarre because like the synth seemed out of place at times but then I don't know if that was it was interesting. I liked it. I liked the music and everything, but it was it did seem very interesting. So time starts, so like it previously did this when time moves so slowly. I do think that speaks to the fact of like when you lose someone you're close to, I do feel like this is just a personal thing. I think that they're around you feel their presence for that first, I would say, few weeks, month, or whatever. And then, and you feel that they're there. They're in this sort of, I do feel like they're in this sort of limbo world before enough time has passed that like, then they start to fade away. And then whether that is, them crossing on or some sort of thing, I don't think we fully, of course, will ever understand that until we're there. But there is some sort of presence that is around there that does slowly go away. That they could be moments in which you do feel that, but it's very fleeting, and it's not. You kind of start to be like their no presence are no longer there. And I do think that really spoke to sort of that of like he was in every moment with her in that sort of time, and then he's just. Time starts moving so rapid pace, and he's only in these brief sort of moments and these things. And so whenever this family's there, he gets upset that they've kind of done everything. They've redone this house, and they're living there, and essentially life's moving on without him. And so he starts throwing things around and everything, and then scaring them and spooking the kids, and essentially spooking them off of the house. And then you have, I thought that was a really great part. And then you have it kind of sitting abandoned for a bit, the house, and then you have the party scene.
Yeah.
What'd you think about the party scene?
I think Will Oldman had more lines than anybody in the movie combined.
I don't know. Is that the guy who talked the whole thing?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Existential rant that he went on. Yeah.
Yes.
And we have all been at parties like that, right? Where there is the guy that you can kind of count on that will just go off and keep talking, and really the only person who's actually hearing him is him. And in this case, the ghost. Yeah. Casey Affleck, he could hear it. He was hearing him.
I've certainly been that person at times.
I'm sure I have too. Although I don't go on existential rants too often. More of a pragmatic
rant.
Yeah, pragmatic rant. Yeah, I've got stories to tell. But by the end of his rant, I was like, everybody in this room is going to go home and kill themselves. I'm pretty sure there's nothing to live for at this point.
I'll tell you, maybe.
Here's Casey Affleck listening to this whole thing going, oh, dude. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Right?
At first it's like, oh, yes, there's this guy that's just sort of doing this sort of hipstery rant and everything, and then he kind of ends up making sense, and then he kind of loses it. It's what that sort of thing would be, but it's really talking about these weightier themes that this movie is shifting towards. This is kind of a pivot point in the movie where it's like no, it's no longer just about grief and loss and moving on and all that stuff. It's about these weightier things about like, what is your point in this world? What's the point of life, and what's the point of death? When like how can you find meaning in these sort of things when it seems so fleeting, and we exist in such a small portion of time, and if we create things, since it's like talking about how he's a musician. Casey Affleck's a musician, and if the point of art is to create something that exists and goes forward in time, and if you could take even the best example like a Beethoven, who creates a symphony that is supposed to be meaningful.
You don't have to replay the you got to leave something for the viewers to watch.
Yes, but if the point of that is that at the end of so many times that people will have this art that exists past you, then what's the that and all that's going to die, and humans are going to die, and that the point is that it'll eventually be forgotten when the sun explodes or whatever. At the very end of the day, that nothing of it's going to really matter, and our human existence not going to matter
in our human existence at all.
And
but you're right, that was the pivot point into the later acts of this movie.
Yes,
right, and it kind of picks up steam at this point.
And I'll tell you, most people could find that very depressing, but I have never been more comforted by any sort of thing in life that I've seen. Like, I found that whole rant incredibly comforting, and I think a lot of people probably wouldn't, and put it when it would be like have existential crisis over it. But I found it very comforting that the fact that it's meaningless, that all of this is meaningless, that it's like that. At the end of the day, what we're creating here, and what we're even this little podcast thing that we're doing here, it's at the end of the day, it's not going to really mean anything, and we're perhaps only doing it for ourselves, and enjoying the people.
I knew that already. So.
And the people that watch us and are our listeners, they enjoy it. So maybe we're just doing it for ourselves and our viewers, and that's it. It's not going to mean anything in the long scheme of things, but for this moment, it means something.
It means something, certainly. That's okay. Yes, absolutely. It means something.
Now, for at least now, yeah.
For at least now. So why get so attached to a house? I don't know, but yes, the sun is going to explode and swallow the earth anyway. Right?
I think it sort of speaks to how we sort of make things more important than what they are, and that's sort of the point, is that we try to find meaning in this world, and there's really not, and whatever. Perhaps there is, that's sort of the sort of thing, So, anyways, it flashes forward, and the best sequence is the house being torn out, and the skyscrapers being erected and all that, and that.
Okay, so were you not like jealous that these filmmakers got to destroy these two houses? I mean, really, how fun was that? I watched my brother destroy a house with a backhoe one time, and it was the coolest thing to watch.
Well, I called
easily it came down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really I call it when he was there picking at the little note thing. I'm like, oh, and now they're going to destroy the house. Yeah, and they did. And it was. I love the shot of him standing in there, and then just that thing just comes through that the machinery, the bulldozer goes through there. I couldn't come up with what that thing's called. Knocks through the first wall. Yeah. Anyways. So, and then it goes on, and there's other acts, and so that's the third act. And the third act's just, to me, the single most interesting piece of the thing, and kind of puts all the themes in place and everything. And that's the part where I really enjoy it, and it starts to go on from there, and essentially a whole city is built and that sort of thing. And that's fascinating. And like that's really the only real effects shot in the movie, or there's a few in that sort of sequence. And
they just picked buildings out of different skylines and made a skyline from it, because the Interfirst Tower from Dallas was in it. And those other buildings were not from Dallas. They were somewhere else. So they just kind of picked some buildings and put them together.
The point is, I mean, this takes place in Dallas, right? In Dallas, that's the idea.
Yeah,
Dallas
that's not the complete Dallas skyline.
Yeah. Well, I think it's supposed to be kind of a future Dallas.
Futuristic, maybe. Yeah. The Interfirst building was there, which, fun fact, just so I wrote this down so that I could share this with you.
Oh, perfect.
From J.R. Ewing's office was literally in that first Interstate Tower.
Oh.
And when they would film in there, they would bring the film crew in and all this stuff, and they'd close off a bank of elevators so that they could get the actors and the cast and the crew to the floor where J.R. Ewing's office was.
Huh. That's fascinating.
Isn't that neat?
Yes, that is neat.
It's kind of a little neat story. Yeah. Yes, I lived in Dallas whenever that was being filmed, so yes.
Perfect time to live in Dallas, too. It's during Dallas.
Yeah. It was the years. Let's not get on to any of my long stories. I did love that, where they suddenly went from, here you went, this rundown old house that finally gets torn down. Thinking, oh my goodness. Not one, but two dogs. I know how you love that, Kate. You love the dogs. Anyway, hey, Go get him. There he goes. Anyway, so yeah, I love how they brought that in from here. You were in this like really depressed looking rural area, and now it's turned into the cityscape, and like you said, it's the first time they'd used the effects, and it was beautiful. And then he jumps off the building.
Yeah,
because he can.
I guess. Yeah, I guess you can. Yeah, I guess you can.
Because he can.
I love the shots of him walking through the building. I liked all that, going into a boardroom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, these people are in a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've been in a couple of meetings where a ghost or two has shown up.
It's just walking around. That's been around since like the Old West times. Yeah.
Having a bagel.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it goes on from there, and it wraps it up. There's 2 more acts after that, but and it's that's certainly the peak of the movie, and that's really what to me makes the movie. But because I think that's definitely the most interesting act of the film. But
they could have stopped there.
They could have stopped. Yeah, I mean, I think that they had to sort of wrap it up. I think the 4th act was probably the most. It kind of was a down. I mean, it was. Essentially then I mean, if we're spoiling the whole thing, I guess we'll spoil the whole thing. And then the 4th act, because we kind of went through the more interesting part of it, the 4th act is him then going through the history of time through that place and sort of kind of seeing in particular like one family that like when like during kind of like Old West time that goes and tries to set up a place there and then gets killed and then that's your sort of 4th act is, and then him going through.
The 4th act is like a trope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, they didn't really have to have this nice little white Christian family slaughtered by Indians.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't as true. I mean, yeah, that's the Hollywood truth.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't really have to go there with that one.
Yeah, and they could have done something where
every little white Christian family was murdered by Indians.
Yes, and I think that was something that was like very much like and like. Certainly, there were probably a lot more Indian deaths in that, or Native American deaths on that land and everything. Yeah, and if you're going to go back through the whole history of this place, why don't go back to like? But perhaps he didn't think he was the right person to do that, or whatever, and it probably is true. But it would have been more fascinating to sort of see what is the history of that land even before contact would have been. Yeah.
It would have been. I think it would have been more real to the history. I think if they would have shown a Native American family.
Yeah.
Living there.
And just all that sort of has happened. I mean, there was whole histories of America pre-contact, and sort of you can sort of look at and pull from, and that's very fascinating. And if they had the budget, go back to prehistoric times, dinosaurs and stuff, and that died on that.
They didn't need to go back that far. They didn't have. They absolutely did not have to go down the road of white Christian family babies murdered by Native Americans.
Yes,
that's not
At least they had the yes. I got to give them. At least they had the restraint to not show it. That they just showed the aftermath of it, but
the aftermath. That's so much restraint.
So much restraint. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. The 4th act was kind of like, oh, okay, we're going to do this, and
we're going to do that. Yeah.
And then the sort of ending part where he kind of they go back through the sort of relationship again, and I think that sort of tied up a lot of the loose ends of. That you had with Rooney Mara and everything. I thought that was fine. Like to me, I don't think you needed the 4th act. You just needed the sort of I think the sort of fit. But if there's no such thing as like a 4-act structure, so I somewhat understand what they're doing, but is the execution of it and the choice of what they're so that's the movie. And it ends with sort of him getting closure and everything about their relationship and everything. We've thoroughly ruin the movie for you. So
because I would not recommend watching this movie unless you're just like really you're a filmmaker like Cade, and then maybe you would appreciate it.
Yeah. So what are you going to rate this movie, Diane? We'll go ahead and give the ratings.
I really kind of struggled with this because I know you're going to use what I would want to use.
Yeah, but you can't. You have drinks. That's what you have.
I have drinks, and I don't have a good option on drinks. I guess maybe a beer.
Okay, just a single beer.
Yeah, the existential, rant was over beers. So let's go ahead and do a beer. Yeah.
Okay.
Give me just one.
Just a single beer. So ultimately, you wouldn't recommend people to watch this movie?
I think no, I wouldn't recommend it at all.
It's a well-liked movie.
I know it had high, like critical ratings and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't look at movies from the perspective of did they, were they intellectually stimulating and was the filmmaking amazing or any of that kind of stuff. The thing I liked the most about the movie was the freaking soundtrack. Mm-hmm. Loved the song at the end. Thought that was really good. But as far as just pure entertainment value, which is what I'm here for, obviously, it's just the entertainment side. It wasn't that entertaining.
Yes, I mean it was at times a chore. It was at times a chore. It was at times a chore. And I'll give it that. And at time, but at the end, I would recommend it. Hopefully, I didn't. I went by point by the movie. So sorry about that. If that does ruin it, I'm giving it. Of course, Diane. I'm giving it a fork and I guess a knife because there's no silent fork and a pie.
Really? I thought. See, I would have gone with the ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bet you're going to do the...
I'm going to do the pie.
Yeah, that was like the most painful scene in the movie. So painful.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the, afterwards, I got the point of it, and I was like, okay, that's sort of why we're doing that. But during it was like, why are we doing this? And... It was definitely one of those things. Like, okay, I get it at the end of the time, and I get the point of it. I would recommend it. It deals with interesting themes. I liked it. I do think it could have been handled a little bit better. I can't imagine what the script of this movie is because I would imagine it's just. I mean, it's probably a very small script of there's a room, with just the few dialogue scenes written out, and. It's just one of those things. It's like, I'm like, well, I guess a script can really mean anything, and you can, I guess, sell it and everything, and everything. But anyways, I thought it was visually interesting at certain points. At times, I was kind of thrown out of it. The pacing of it was by the end of it, you get the sort of intention behind the pacing of it. It's not a really long. Fun fact: our Extraordinary is a longer movie than A Ghost Story, which is...
Yeah, and it seemed like it was so much faster. Really was a long... That Ghost Story is a long movie.
Yes. And so that was like kind of... and it seems... So it's an hour and a half. It's a solid what most movies are, and it's actually kind of a leaner movie than most. But yeah, it seems longer because of just the pacing of it. But I did recommend it. I love the themes that it's dealing with. Some execution could have done a little bit better. And I do think it should have probably been cast differently. I think different.
Well, it's a Casey Affleck.
Yeah. He's kind of I'll tell you, I loved him in Manchester by the Sea, one of my favorite movies. He did great in that. And it really played to his strengths. And and I, to the most part, I did believe he was a Texas or a transplant or what they call him, a Texas musician, who did the little hipstery. Like I kind of believe them as like a hipstery couple. I think that part worked, but did not believe that Rooney Mara would live in that house. But she didn't really. She left it. So okay, that's that movie. Have anything else to add about that?
Not a word.
Okay, great. We can cross another movie off of our A24 list, Diane.
Yay.
Great. We'll go into our intermission. A little minute-long interlude. Grab your snacks. Be sure to stop by the concession stand. And then Diane will be back to talk about the plot of the 2019 comedy movie, also ghost movie, Extraordinary.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
Hi. Thanks, Cade. Now, let's talk about Extraordinary. Let me move over a little bit so I'm not so faded out. So I don't look so much like a ghost myself today. The Extraordinary is an Irish comedy. So think British comedy, that kind of, without the laugh track. The story itself is about Rose, who is a mostly sweet and lonely Irish driving instructor who must use her supernatural talents to save the daughter of Martin, also a mostly sweet and lonely guy, from a washed-up rock star played by Will Ford in one of my favorite roles for him, who is using her in a satanic pact to reignite his fame. And from there, comedy ensues. Okay, Cade, that's...
Yes.
Oh, here's one note that I wrote down. Think Ghost Whisperer with jokes, no tears, and vomiting. For people who watch Ghost Whisperer, I kind of like that show myself, but anyway. But it was not a funny show in any way, shape, or form. And there were lots of tears, and there was no vomiting, and all three of those things kind of are present with that.
Yes.
Wonderful comedy. This, to me, was a throwback to... I love the old British sitcoms, like...
Fawlty Towers.
Well, Fawlty Towers is one, but Are You Served? Have you ever seen any of those? Oh, my God, they're wonderful. Keeping Up with Appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These. Yeah. And, of course, there's Monty Python and Benny Hill, which is a different kind of a slapstick kind of thing. But this one really tied in for me, the old 1970s, 80s British comedies. I love those.
I agree. It's also... like comedy films that we haven't seen anymore. Like it's kind of Ghostbusters-y, like it's at times. I mean, it's
a low budget one.
A low budget one. Like, I mean, it's kind of something that it's kind of gone by the wayside here in America, but it's a very concept forward, premise driven, situational comedy. In this case, paranormal sort of related. That it's. You don't really see in America anymore, which is a shame. But it's something that certainly was popular at one point in time, and it's a harkens back to that, but of course with a Irish sensibility.
Yes, with an Irish sensibility, and I loved Rose. She's obviously a comedic actress in Ireland, and she does have writing credits on this movie, and I think the guy who plays Martin, her leading man, is a more of a serious actor, but had some excellent timing and wonderful voices. Yeah. Oh my gosh!
So he has the talent, as they call it. Each of them have like paranormal or some talents. She can summon these ghosts and things and stuff like that, and he has the ability to, like, he can hear them, but he can also like channel them, is the sort of talent that he can have, and so a lot of these ghosts inhibit his body.
Yes, and her job is to exercise.
Yeah.
Yes, and so right. Yes, and so in this case, to save his daughter, they need the ectoplasm of 7 ghosts.
Something like that. Yes.
And she sees ghosts everywhere. Yes. I love the toaster. That had the cord that would wave to her every day. Yes. I I mean, everything in her daily life, she would seek, these little hauntings that were happening around her.
Yes, and so that's really the premise is like the sort of setup is that they're going to have to exorcise this X amount of ghosts in this time period, and which is a comedic premise. You can have different vignettes of like where these ghosts are at and everything, and it's really a great sort of comedic setup of that. And then of course like something that, again, a throwback to like kind of older comedy movies is you have like a sort of villain of that sort of is like your person that you're going up against, and this cartoon like villain, and Will Forte plays this cartoon villain, and he's this one hit wonder, a rock star who
I love this. I mean,
who's this Satan worshiper, and he's like trying to sacrifice a virgin, like you said, with the in order to I guess help his music career, help his comeback, and that's also just a great premise for him. And they all have like these really great like histories and backstories of all these characters, and he's great in this. I think he's the sort of standout of this, but they're all doing really great stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, he's the American.
Yes, he's the American.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and they have a lot of references to The Exorcist in this.
Mm-hmm.
A
lot of visual references too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they actually referred to it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Rose, when he talks about the movie The Exorcist, and Rose says, "No, I haven't met them. I haven't met him." Yeah. Or, they referred to Ghostbusters. She said, "I haven't read that book."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there were some good lines in the movie, and their timing was really, really good. And I enjoyed this one, and I would recommend it highly. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to give away a bunch of it, except for that I did get tired of the vomiting part.
Yeah. Because that's the punchline each time, and it's just like I've seen this punchline, and it's to me, I think that they could have played up if your premise is that you had to go and exorcise these 7 ghosts. That's the whole sort of point of the movie, and you're going to do that. Like I feel like the bits could have been a little bit better in those. Like that was sort of like that should be your highlight of your movie, is coming up with 7 specific examples of these where you're going in here and doing this ghost exorcism. And to me, they were varying degrees of like funny, or like even like some of them weren't. Like it's just like they just like felt like then they had to do this chore, and it's like, well, no one forced you to make 7 your number. So it's like, and like at a certain point the punchline was just, here's the thing, and then showing him throw up this ectoplasm, and it was like, it's got to be a little bit more than that, or I don't understand why you force 7 to be your number in this. So that was my one really major criticism of the movie, is that like some of the just character bits were funnier.
To, her father, who was doing the TV series originally, talked about how ghosts are everywhere. They could be in any inanimate object, like the trash can, or whatever. So the actual ghosts couldn't all be like, was it Bonnie, his wife? They couldn't all be like that. They had to be mundane as well. And I think that was the point, was that there are ghosts everywhere. And so it's like they're a dime a dozen. 7, no big deal.
Yes.
You can pick up 7 on the way to the store and back. Yeah. They're so common and mundane. And
I like that. And I like the fact that they just sort of are everywhere, and they're sort of the reasoning for a lot of different things that's happening. And I did enjoy that. Yeah. I just kind of wish they did a little bit more with the comedy wise with that premise right there. That's what kind of my only.
Didn't you love the opening where they, at the very last thing they put on the screen is this is based on a true story, and then the garbage truck just wipes out that, I love that. I was like, okay, so it's not a true story at all.
Yeah.
Garbage. Got it. I just love that. That's, and then
I like the stuff with their father. Like, I feel like that there could have been more of that, of like the fact that they had this television show, and that there were like the little graphics, and then by the time like no spoiler, but by the end of it, like jump forward 3 months, I forgot that there was that sort of little punch-ins that they happened, because they kind of got rid of that for some time. But I love the sort of cutbacks to that, and like I kind of wish they dealt with that a little bit more, that she was this child almost prodigy type thing in this community.
Up until she killed her father.
Yes.
Yeah. She thought she killed her
She
father.
thought her killed her father, yeah.
But we won't give that part away. It would be unfair.
Unfair.
But yeah. So I was trying to think. I did have one point where, it got a little bit boring when it came to Will Forte learning how to drive. Kind of lost me a little bit there. No, you guys are left. But I think we've all seen this quite a bit before.
And it's like that it was such a ridiculously heightened. I had to give it a little bit of credit for that because of like how it had been set up. Like it. I think they could have done a little bit more with it, yes. I found it so the fact that they built it up for just the tiny little joke, that he doesn't even hardly ever. I want to spoil any sort of jokes, but yeah, I do like that. I love the glove thing. That was one of my funniest jokes.
Took more for the gloves, but that is so classic Will Forte too.
Yeah, Will Forte.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I did love the line. Oh, go ahead.
If we're talking about Will Forte comedy things, he's great. He knows like that. I would imagine was something he came up with on the day or pitched beforehand. Like it probably wasn't a part of the script. But just he has such great comedic things, and we're going to point to my favorite Will Forte bit is the spelling bee SNL sketch. If you ever seen the Will Forte spelling bee, where he's. And that is an excellent example of going well over the line of where it wasn't like it goes past the point of being where it was funny and then it's not funny and then it comes back around and then like it's him and Chris Parnell and that's hilarious. I mean, there's a bit at the end with like Jack Black explanations. Just ignore that part, but the part where it's the actual spelling bee part, that's one of the great sketches. Yeah,
classic. And then I wanted to know if Casey Affleck was making an appearance as Astaroth, the demon.
Oh, the demon. Yes, that was
the same costume.
Same costume. Good. And she even sees ghosts in the beginning where they're kind of or look like that too. And so very interesting that they have two movies that good choices. Whoever made that decision. Good choices.
They were good choices. I'm glad I wrote that down. Good choices. Good choices, Cade. Good choices. Put those two together. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Now I can tell everyone my first time was a threesome. Yeah. Oh my God. I cracked up. That was, you knew that was coming.
Yes.
They'd kind of set it up before, you kind of knew.
The switching back and forth. Yeah.
So you knew this was, the daughter really wasn't the one they were looking for. Oh, didn't you love how they took her and floated her into the back of the car and drove her around?
Yes.
The daughter? Yeah, that was great.
And the good, like, setup of the gloating where the coat
my God.
and the fact that you can't wake someone up. Yeah. It's just the horrific,ness of that. And then, it really sets up why we can't.
I am not a fan of gratuitous violence and bloodletting, but that was excellent.
Yes.
It was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. I told you not to touch the virgin. I just didn't ask her a question. Yeah.
And I love his wife, Will Forte's wife, and that she's a great Australian comedic actress that she was like on the way up, and then it never really sort of went anywhere, but she's fascinating. Like everything I've seen her in is she's really, I mean, she plays the sort of loud sort of, but I find her incredibly funny in everything. And she did like a part in Comedy Bang Bang, which is a great comedy show and everything. And she's done, I think, even some of the podcast with that. And she's just genuinely a really funny person. And everything I've seen her in, and I thought she was really good on this one as well.
She was in Trainwreck. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought I had seen her before, but that was where I saw her. Was in Trainwreck.
Yeah, she's been in a few things, and like to me, it's like right. I would say, yeah, it was over just recent years. I haven't seen her really, and of course, there's other things going on. But yeah, it was. She was seemingly on her way up, and I hadn't seen her in a few things. I was like, oh yeah, she was really good in a lot of things as like bit roles, and knocked it out of the park. Everything I saw her in, and I was glad to see her in this again, even though this was from a few years back. Okay, well, I'll give me my the rating I'm going to give. do you have your rating? Do you know what you're going to give it?
I wanted to give it 4 juice boxes.
4 juice boxes. Okay.
We had 4 juice boxes in this movie.
Juice boxes. Was there juice boxes in the movie?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I figured there would be a juice box.
Okay.
I mean,
there is a juice
how
box.
could you not?
Okay. Let me get this. Let me do mine first because I thought this is what you were going to do. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it. Oh, man, I didn't copy it over right. That's the pies again. Okay. Okay, here's yours again. Here's your 4 juice boxes. There's your 4 juice boxes.
Yay. See, and it looks almost identical to the little chicken on it. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So mine is what would typically be a glass of milk, but in this case, a glass of ectoplasm.
Oh, God.
A jar.
A jar of ectoplasm.
Yeah.
I would love to know, Ava, if you're still on the line, she's sending us little direct messages or comments. If you enjoyed this movie, Ava.
Did she watch it?
She watched both of them.
She watched both of them. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, let us know because I was thinking watching this that like this would be kind of a good one for her. She could have enjoyed both because they're both romantic movies.
They are both romantic movies. One's a comedy, one's a tragedy. Just a tragedy all the way around.
Tragedy. Yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's so okay. You would recommend this movie? You said highly. How would it rank against your other the comedies we've had?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that part.
Okay.
I really haven't. I'm always about the latest movie I watched. That was funny.
Yeah.
That was good.
I thought, I'm gonna be less of an enthusiast about this movie. I thought, I liked first the positives. I thought that all the comedy came from a place of character, which is a huge gripe of mine of whenever, especially in modern comedies and just people who don't understand comedy often will write from a place of whatever the punchline is. And I had to give it to this movie that they didn't do that it wasn't like going every single comedy bit came from a place of that's what that character would say in that moment and what they would sort of do and how they would react. And at no point did they compromise a character for a punchline. And that is a huge, huge, huge plus in my book. Right. These characters are wacky, sure, and kind of, wouldn't exist maybe in the real world 100%, but at no point did it...
In Ireland.
Yeah. At no point did it... did they seem like not like themselves to make a comedy joke,
right?
Which happens a lot in a modern American comedy films or just films in general. Like they screech to a halt to make a punchline that these characters wouldn't ever do. So in that case, I give it a huge plus. At the same time, I do think that it could have been, maybe this wasn't particularly my style of comedy. Maybe that's it. Or even some parts of I think they could have played up the comedy a few different spots. But overall, I enjoyed it and I would recommend it. It was a fun time, but it wasn't, I don't think ranks in the Mount Rushmore of comedy films or whatever. It was, or even some of the funnier ones that we have had, like a Bad Words. I think is a funnier movie and it works a lot better and everything. But
I think some of it too is that kind of humor, where you've just got one, punchline after another. That was it's not about the story as much as it is about the jokes in the story. I guess maybe I don't know, but yeah, and all of it. Humor comes from the characters themselves. Yes. They are characters. My favorite was the woman whose husband, when he passed away, was caught in the recycle bin.
Yes.
She's like, "Would you like some tea?" Yeah.
Yeah. To me, my favorite was Ava said she didn't watch either of them.
She didn't watch them? Okay.
Wow, these would have been good movies.
That surprises me. Oh my gosh, it really did. I think she would have enjoyed the existential part of the first one, and I think she would have loved the comedy of the second one.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of vomit. Yeah, it's not actual vomit, if that helps. It's actually somewhat worse. It's this ectoplasm. Sorry, she said that Ava commented that
Not a big fan of vomiting.
not a big fan of vomiting, and it's like it's not. It's ghost gel that that person has to cough up.
It's more like spitting up.
Yes.
Really the first one, it was like, it was a gagging, vomiting. This is a nightmare kind of thing.
Yes, it's uncomfortable for the guy to do this. That's going through it and everything for the character. I'll tell you,
toward the end, he got better at it.
my favorite bit is just the shot. I love a good cut to a wide and show the comedy of it. That's always works for me. Anytime that you can cut out of like an intense situation and then cut out to a comedy bit, and when they're in their cars and they're following the body, that is the most funny part of the entire movie for me.
That is hilarious. It's hilarious.
The snail face that they're going. That's and the fact that they can get out of their car, they're like,
and run past it. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
To me was the peak.
That was hilarious. All while Claudia, the wife, Will Fort's character, is ordering Chinese food.
Yes, and she's trying to get home before the Chinese food. Right? Yeah, it's great, and it's all seemingly because so she can get confuse them and get like an extra order out of it. Yeah, it was the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and she did get the extra order.
She did.
Yeah.
In a roundabout way. Yeah.
Didn't earn anything. But, so,
right.
Yeah, that was a fun time.
Yes. Well, that's our extraordinary. And so now we're going to go in and preview next week's attractions. So here we go.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
When it comes to entertainment, you just can't beat a good film. I've missed that, Diane, haven't you?
I have missed hearing you say that.
Okay, great. This has been fun. It's just like slipping into an old glove. That's a phrase, right?
Or sock or something. Yeah. Something we're familiar with.
Something we're familiar with. Yeah. It fits like an old glove. That's the phrase.
It's like an old glove.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's what you're supposed to say. We have yes. This we did it a little bit different this time. We have pre-planned our movies that we are doing, so a little behind the scenes of that, and so we can help book guests. We'll just give it all out there to our audience. So our next week one is going to be, we're talking about The Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster. It's a double feature from the same director. So some of these will have themes, like, as you know, this week was ghost theme. This next week we're highlighting that director and everything.
It's Colin Farrell week.
It's also Colin Farrell. It's also Colin Farrell week.
It's Colin Farrell week.
Sorry, I forgot.
Let's just call it what it is.
It's Colin Farrell week.
Colin Farrell week.
So sometimes there's connection, sometimes there's less of a connection. But yes, next week's Colin Farrell week. Yes, and we might have someone on who we haven't had before, but we mentioned in this podcast.
Yeah.
So we'll see, and she's an avid fan of ours, so she'll get all of our references and stuff. All
and
our callbacks.
We are going to do this on site together too.
Yes, we'll be here at this thing here.
At the studio.
At the studio. And
at the Cade studio.
Yes, and I'll have to sort of figure out how I'm going to lay out this thing, because I'm hoping to use this as the background. I might have to use the Cade and Friends background, but we'll see. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out then. We have fixed the board. The board works. So
the board works now. So and yes, and so yes, so we hopefully this is our COVID pod. the next week the three of us were our own little COVID pod there for a long time.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That was way back when. It was that, and now it's kind of interesting. It'll be our first time doing a live stream in person. We've recorded Cade and Friends, but we haven't ever done one like this. I'll have to set up cameras and how to switch between them or something. Because we still have to talk. We have to say our previews of the films. We have to go through the plots, and so we'll have to
I don't know why we bother to do that, because let's face it, we give the whole thing away anyway, right? So we may just do something different.
We'll see. We'll see what we do here, but it's fun being back with Double Feature Movie Club, and
it is.
It's we said we were going to go away so we could miss it a bit, and so we've missed it. We've missed it, I guess, since we're back.
Yeah, we have. I've missed looking forward to seeing two movies that I would never have picked out on my own to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That 50% of the time I know I'm going to really enjoy them,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's going to be the other 50% that I'm like, why did Cade pick this movie?
I'll tell you, that seems to be we haven't had a week where they've both been awful, have they? Have we? I don't recall.
Yeah.
we
have.
And typically it kind of comes where it's a mix, and I think this was actually probably a really good mix of like what I kind of lean towards and what you kind of lean towards, and even so, I think I don't know. I wasn't 100% on either film, but I did find things I enjoyed in both, and I recommended both. But yes. So yeah, next week, The Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster. They're both on Showtime, so I think you probably need to get your show. Do you have a Showtime subscription, Diane?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
I finally broke down. I think, though, I'm going to get rid of HBO Max, and then...
Until they figure out their whole thing.
Well, they got rid of all the Sesame Street stuff.
Yeah, they got rid of quite a few things of just like...
episodes and stuff, so...
Yeah.
I don't watch it that often. It's we did, Ava and I were watching, the series from the Outlander guy, or not Outlander, but Downton Abbey guys, that it was just kind of okay, but and maybe I'll pick it back up when that comes out again, but no, I think I'm going to get rid of it. And go.
Well, if you haven't
yet. I'm so far behind on Disney, and there are so many shows that you and Jen have talked about, Ava's talking about, that I've really got to get caught up. And then I also want to get the Streamlined down Hulu. Because you guys have watched the hotel show, right?
Yeah, I did. I've watched all the way except for the last episode comes out tomorrow night.
So it's Steve Martin.
Martin
Short.
Selena Gomez.
What's the name of it?
Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building.
We watched the first season together.
I love that. I love that. So my Hulu friends have failed me terribly. So
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Hulu I watched quite a bit, but I'd say I probably do watch HBO Max more than any other ones.
What are your they do have Succession.
Mm-hmm. They have Succession. They have. I'll tell you what. The last episode just came out this weekend, and it was great. And it was the rehearsal. So if you need something to watch before you get rid of it, watch it's like 8 episodes. It's called The Rehearsal. I love that movie, or not movie, that show. And it's great. It's Nathan Fielder. If you want to know, Nathan For You is his show he did before this, which is a Comedy Central show, but it's also all on HBO. And it's one of the funniest things ever. And this one's a little bit more existential and interesting and it's funny. Oh, it's so funny. There's so many moments in it that's just absolutely hysterical. And The Rehearsal, I highly recommend anybody watching that.
Okay.
It kind of blurs the line between what's real and what's not, and what's it's great. It's a great show.
Great show.
Yeah, and I
30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's somewhere
between
that. It's like they're half hours. So since there's no time restrictions, they can kind of be upwards of 40 minutes. But yeah, but it's really funny. And the premise behind it is he's helping people rehearse their specific things that they need in their lives, whether that's a specific life experience or some sort. In the beginning, it's kind of I think I told you about that, about this guy who's like on a bar trivia team who
Oh yeah.
who wants to break to his friends that he doesn't have a master's degree. He lied at one point, and he's had to keep up this ruse, and so he's like trying to break the news to this friend that he doesn't have that. And so he builds a whole set around this bar. It's to have him rehearse this. It's great. It's a great show.
The guy's name wasn't Barry, was it?
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
that's one of those. Yeah. And
anything else you think I should watch on HBO Max before it's gone?
Of
course, I'll pick it back up at some point, but it is the most expensive streaming service I have. So
yes, well, this tonight is the restart of the new Game of Thrones show.
Oh yeah, I'm not watching that.
I'm gonna watch.
The first one. I didn't watch the first one. I don't plan on watching this one.
I didn't watch it until the final season, and I'm like, okay, I gotta. Everyone, it's the hype was dying down. People were starting to hate it, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. I was because it was no longer. If I don't jump on the thing right when it's starting and people are like trying to force it down my throat, I'm like, no, I won't watch it.
No, I won't watch it. Yeah,
out of protest. That's me with Breaking Bad. I was like, oh, because everyone was like, this is the greatest show of all time, and I had an in because very early on, before it was even popular, I had been highly recommended it before people even like the first and second season of the show, and I was going to watch it, and then I was like, something came up and I didn't watch it, and then it blew up in popularity, and then I was just like, no, I'm not watching it. And so Game of Thrones was the same way. It was hugely popular, and I'm like, no, out of spite, I'm not, because of how many people who's recommended it to me, I'm not watching it. But then the hype started dying down. People were like, oh, this isn't so good, and don't waste your time. And it's like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to waste my time. And so I watched it all.
Now I'm going to watch it.
Now I'm going to watch it because you're telling me not to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really actually glad I did. Just so I know what people talk about when they kind of bring it up. It's just mostly for that information. I enjoy it. It's like, oh, I get it. I get these characters because people reference them in the world. So I'll give this new one a shot too. Because I kind of missing watching a show week to week. I
know, having something to look forward to every week.
Yeah. And so it's coming right as Only Murders is ending. And so it's like, I'm excited about that. Yes. Hacks.
Hacks, that's right.
I never watched the new season of that. I need to watch that.
Yeah. Ava loved that one. Ava, what was the name of the series that we were watching from the Downton Abbey guys about New York at the?
You told me that. Yeah. It had Christine Brinsky or whatever her name is. Whatever.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What was it? Anyway.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, she said the same thing again. Okay. Anyway, I just had problems with the production of that one. It's supposed to be in New York at the turn of the century, yet they have concrete streets and, it's.
The Gilded Age, right?
Gilded Age. Thank you. Thank you for looking that up because I couldn't think of it. But it was a little bit forgettable. What I liked the most about it were the costumes.
Yeah. Was that one that... Is that the show that Joss Whedon was doing and then he got fired off of and everything? Isn't that the show that happened with? That he was halfway through the thing that he got kicked off?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I could be wrong. The guy you're talking about, the guy who did the first Avengers movies,
yeah, he
right?
did Buffy and all that.
Yeah, he's a problem dude, right?
Yeah. He did it was something else. What was it? It was something else kind of in like a time period like that. That I think you had seen or someone had talked about.
Yeah, and he was
The Nevers. That's what he did.
The Nevers. That was it. That was good.
That was also HBO, and it was kind of. It wasn't. It didn't take place in it was Victorian era London. Okay.
Yes. It was a Victorian era in London, and it's people that have talents.
Mm-hmm.
I love this kind of shows that people have talents. Says the second season is called The Never Somewhere. Be released in 2022. Yeah, it doesn't say when. I wish it would. I'd probably have to go back and watch the first season, over at least the last episode to figure out, to remember it all, because the characters are really go by fast, So anyway.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah, that was the one that he was fired from, right?
Yes, that was the one that was like halfway through, or like he did like the pilot and like 2 episodes or something. It was something that it was kind of his thing, and then it got taken away, and it was a whole thing. It was right at that time.
It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing, and like they were up. I know HBO was kind of a little upset because they were like spent so much money on it, on like getting that done. Yeah, and so they couldn't cut it out. But anyways, it's the whole thing. Okay.
I could see why, because the production cost on that would be high.
Yes. And
pieces like that are.
Yeah. Well, that's been our first episode back, episode 16 of Double Feature Movie Club. If you are watching this as a video, thanks for joining in live for our live stream. If you're watching us later as a podcast, thanks for doing that. Click all the buttons, as we say. Subscribe, like, whatever it is. Rate us. Yeah. Write us a review.
Stars.
5 stars. Subscribe. Whatever we missed there.
What do they do on Twitch? What do they do?
I don't know. Do they follow? We're very new to the Twitch game. So
we're gonna have to learn about that.
We're gonna have to learn about that. Whatever you do on Twitch, please do it. Comment it or follow or whatever the case is. We might have to start gaming, Diane. We might have to start doing some video games. We'll have to start streaming.
Start.
We'll have to start streaming us gaming now. Is what we'll have to do.
Oh, you know what? That could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and just transition into that at the end of it. Just be like, and now we're going to game. Yeah. Yeah. Because don't you do?
I think that would be fun.
You do what you play June's Journey, right?
Oh, I have several, but yes, you know about June's Journey because at 7:00 every evening I have to like do this coffee thing and get energy and stuff. So I have a time thing on that. But
you were at Andrew's opening playing June's Journey. I remember correctly.
I did. I cracked open that phone so hard and had to get my energy. It only takes a few seconds. I did it tonight while we were on air. I didn't even notice. Did you? Because I'm a good team player.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you were gaming. You were streaming your gaming here on this. Yeah. Didn't show the screen, but.
I really was. Now I gave away my other computer because I had 2 for a long time. One that I just used for gaming. So, but I got rid of it. Gave it away.
Well. So yes, we'll have to start gaming here on the thing.
I kind of can't wait.
Yeah, we'll have to transition to that. You're supposed to do it for hours, though, Diane. You're supposed to be on there for hours gaming. And now there's a Cade Thomas Twitch channel, and I guess I'll have to start appearing on there and start playing all my games that are off camera here.
Yes, you've got a bookcase, a plethora of games.
Yeah, I don't know how interesting that will be, but would you watch me for 3 hours gaming, Diane?
No, I wouldn't.
You're supposed to say yes, even if you don't.
Oh yeah, if it was Galaga.
It's Galaga. Yeah, I'll stream me playing Galaga over here. My Pac-Man.
Or Pac-Man.
Yeah,
you got Pac-Man right behind you.
Yeah, Pac-Man, and there is Galaga on this Pac-Man machine too. So.
Oh, there is. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, there's Galaga. There's Pac-Man, Pac-Man Plus, Super Pac-Man, which is the best Pac-Man game, and then Pac and Pal, which is the worst Pac-Man game, and
next time you're out of town, maybe I can house sit for you.
For make sure that the machine's fine.
So I can play Galaga for 3 hours. So, and I'll bring my dog because I know how much you love that.
Yeah. If you want to know how much I love that, you can listen to Cade and Friends podcast, episode 5, the infamous Chooky Dookie Doo episode. So, great.
I will never let Cade near my animals again. Not going to happen.
It's not like I do it. It's just that I don't like them. That's where it ends with that. Not an animal fan, but oh well.
No.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well. What you gonna do? Nobody's perfect, right?
I would rather miss my animals than my house. So.
Oh, would you haunt your animals?
No. No. I wouldn't mind coming back as like Ava's cat.
Oh.
'Cause Ava's a real animal lover, and so yeah, I wouldn't mind coming back as her cat because I would be spoiled. I would be fat and spoiled, so I'd be pretty happy.
Being a cat wouldn't be too awful, really, in the grand scheme. If you were a house cat, being a house cat wouldn't be a bad life. For someone who loved you, that wouldn't be too bad.
Especially Ava's cat. Emerson is so spoiled. Yeah.
You don't have to worry about really anything. Things are kind of taken care of for you, and then you just kind of lounge around, and it wouldn't be bad.
And she provides a entire setting to watch birds all day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's good times.
Good life.
Yeah, it is good life. I wouldn't mind coming back as my own dog because obviously he's got a good life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. See, not too bad. Well, thanks for joining us. That we keep saying teasing that we're about to end. Well, now we're about to end.
We're really going to end this time.
Going to really end this time. So yes, next week we are talking about the killing of a sacred deer and the lobster. So mark that on your list. They are available to watch on Showtime if you have that, or you can just rent them anywhere that you have them.
Colin Farrell week, man.
Colin Farrell week. Okay. Well, see ya. Bye.
Bye.